Isaiah chapter 9, reading from the New International Version of the Scriptures, the word of the Lord is as follows. Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Thus far, the word of the Lord. This past Tuesday, two of my favorite shows, NCIS and FBI, were put on pause for the annual airing of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which on that evening had the second highest ratings in both total viewers and among adults between the ages of 25 and 54. It tied with the highest rated show, The Bachelorette, among ages 18 and 49. Number two, in all of the shows showing on all of the various television channels, Rudolph was second only to The Bachelorette. And with that, the question must be raised, how does a show that first aired in 1964, still shown in rudimentary animation of the 1960s, how does that still hold such an audience? How does a show about a reindeer shot in 1960 technology surpass others shot in 4 HD quality? How does it surpass that in number, not just of kids, but adult viewership? Perhaps it is due to the timelessness of the themes that it addresses. The story strikes chords that are common to the human condition. All ages can identify with themes that travel in and out of the story. And I find myself now returning to reflect upon this reindeer. And if you need a title, it's Reindeer Reflections. I find myself with this year having been cloaked and caught by COVID, a racial reckoning, and a disrupted economy. I find myself resonating with some themes in Rudolph's story. It was written in 1939 by Robert L. May. And May, having grown up during the Great Depression to parents who lost their wealth, he was able to attend Dartmouth University, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa. He subsequently began working as an advertising copywriter for Montgomery Ward. There were those of us young enough to remember Montgomery Ward, where he was given the assignment of writing a Christmas book for shoppers that was uplifting and that would center around a cute animal. Now, at the time of being given that assignment, life was far from cute. Life was far from uplifting for Robert May because his wife was in the final throes of battling cancer. She would die several months after he was given the assignment, leaving him without a wife and his children without a mother. Recognizing the personal devastation that her loss posed, his supervisor offered him the chance of postponing the project, but he refused. Because the story that he would write would be a way for him to come to terms with the loss, as well as it would be the means through which he would confront the questions from his children concerning the fairness of life. It would be the means of addressing how they deal with negative blows, cope with inequity, and how to transcend hardship and heartache. May finished writing it in August of 1939, and with its first publishing, over 2.4 million copies would be distributed. In 1947, a spoken word version, spoken word ain't nothing new, a spoken word version was done and was then followed by the famous song by the same name in 1949, and it sold more records than any other Christmas song with the exception of White Christmas. And then in 1964, an animated television version debuted initially on NBC and has been shown every year since on CBS. May chose a reindeer due to the deer at the zoo being his children's favorite animal. The star of the show is a reindeer named Rudolph, who is born with a red nose. And this red nose had a luminescence about it such that it wasn't just red, but it was glowingly red. And because of this glowingly red nose, he's ridiculed by other reindeer. They don't allow him to play with them. Ostracized and isolated, he is barred from trying out for the team that would power Santa's sleigh. Sad and dejected, Rudolph leaves, where he meets an elf by the name of Hermie, who desired to be a dentist. It was an unheard of aspiration, and like Rudolph, he was labeled out of touch, cast aside. The two of them begin their journey into an unknown territory that is cold and barren. Eventually, they meet a trapper by the name of Yukon Cornelius, who joins them. Soon thereafter, the Abominable Snowman catches a glimpse of the glow from Rudolph's nose. Its light could not be hidden, and as the snowman attacks them, they luckily are set apart by a broken piece of ice, setting them adrift only to land on an island occupied by a unique group of tenants. It was the island of Misfit toys. These were defective in one way or another. They were deemed useless and were relegated to the land of throwaways. And that evening, sensing that his presence would further endanger the lives of his friends, Rudolph leaves the island and finds his parents trapped by the Abominable Snowman. Now that he's got a little horns on his head, he attempts to defend his family against the Abominable Snowman and is knocked down, and he is rescued by Yukon Cornelius and Hermie. It is in the wrestling with the Abominable that Yukon Cornelius and the Yeti fall over the cliff. Rudolph and the family return. It's Christmas Eve. A blizzard has hit the area, accompanied by a thick blanket of fog that threatens to ground Santa and the crew. The threat of Christmas being canceled looms heavy because there is no light to guide them, no radar, no sonar, no GPS. And it is then that they notice the light emanating from Rudolph's nose. That light had been there all the time. Only now, with heavy fog, what was seen as a liability is understood to be an asset. The reindeer, relegated to the margins and periphery, is now asked to leave the team. And as they prepare to leave, Yukon Cornelius arrives with the Abominable Snowman, who has now been detoothed. No longer wild, but tame. And as Rudolph leads the team, they stop by the island of Misfit toys, where the toys are reclaimed to be repaired and used in the delivery. Now, I know some of y'all are scratching your heads wondering, have I really lost my mind? But there's a whole lot. There's a whole lot in this story. The first is that while we don't choose the challenges that confront us, we must choose how we live with them. Rudolph was born with a red nose, which neither he nor his parents chose. There were no plastic surgeons that could augment or just give him a nose job. He was stuck with what he had. And so, and friends, we are stuck with what we have. Some things are not of our choosing. Certainly for May and his children, the death of his wife and the death of their mother was not one that they chose. They were stuck with what they had. And Rudolph's first choice is living with it, and his first choice was denial. His first choice was to try to hide. They put coal over his nose to try to hide the fact that he had a red nose. And while it worked for a while, eventually the coal fell off. It was during the tryouts, and Rudolph has the longest jump. And as he jumps and lands, the impact of landing causes the coal to come off his nose. And so here he is, the longest jumper, but with a red nose that glowed for all to see. His nose was a mark of distinction when seen by others. The others chose to affix a negative value to it. And because of the difference of his nose, Rudolph was stigmatized. He was denied participation in society. He could no longer play in the reindeer games, even though he was the most qualified among them. Even though he had the longest jump, the color of his nose automatically disqualified him. Living with a nose whose color is viewed as a negative speaks to the experience of many whose personhood and place are denied. It's the experience of ethnic and racial minorities. It's the experience of women. It's the experience of the physically and emotionally challenged. It's the plight of those who are born in certain zip codes, things that they did not choose, but with which they must live. Rather than subject himself to the constant rejection and ridicule, Rudolph decides to go it alone, only to come across Hermie. Hermie is a threat to the status quo. He dares to pursue something other than toy making. Hermie has an alternative vision for his future, being that of a dentist. He bucks the tradition. Everybody knew that the role of elves was that of toy making. Every elf seemed to be happy making toys. They ate well and business was booming. Who in their right mind could want anything other than making toys in Santa's toy shop? There was something inside of Hermie that caused him to desire something other, something more than toy making. He saw something different for himself. It was dentistry. And as long as he kept that to himself, things were fine. As long as he was in the toy factory making toys, even though he had a desire to be a dentist, as long as he was doing that, he was fine. But when he announced his desire to be a dentist, things changed. He was suggesting something different. Elves could do more than make toys. Elves could be dentists. When he made that suggestion, the other elves began to laugh at him. He was called loony, for who had ever heard of an elf being a dentist? The others sought to export their limited thinking to him. They could not support him because they did not see it for themselves as being a possibility. Hermie, talking about being a dentist, was disrupting what was an idyllic existence with his unrealistic dreaming. In their minds, he should be content with just being a toy-making elf. Those who dare to dream of an existence, of a future beyond what is normally accepted and held for them are always a threat. Such was the case with Joseph and his dreams of ascendancy. Such was the case for suffragettes and continues to be the case for women who want equal pay for equal work. Such was and continues to be the case for racial and ethnic minorities in America. Threats to the status quo. With Hermie, Rudolph gains a fellow traveler, giving us another lesson, which is that we gain strength to live in and live up to the challenges of life by the gift of friends, by the gift of companions, by the gift of fellowship. With each experiencing isolation and marginalization, Rudolph and Hermie experienced the power of authentic friendship. They accept each other's uniquenesses and travel into an unknown together. With each singing the song that asks the question, why am I such a misfit? They found acceptance and affirmation with each other. They traveled in community, and as community, eventually adding Yukon Cornelius to the ranks. Strength for the journey of life is gained through authentic relationships. God recognized this in the very beginning. That's why God created humanity in community. Because God understands and understood that we need to see and be seen. We need to hear and be heard. We need to hold and be held. We need to give and to receive. We need to be understood and to understand. The gift of friendship helps us navigate the hard and harsh realities of life. The writer of Ecclesiastes advises us in Ecclesiastes 4:9-12, two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. How can one keep warm alone? Though one may be empowered, two can defend themselves, and a threefold cord is not easily broken. Jesus recognized this. That's why when he sends the disciples out, he does not send them out one by one. He sends them out two by two, because he understood that for the journey that would be theirs, they needed authentic relationship to be successful in the gospel enterprise. Rudolph, Hermie, and Yukon Cornelius traveled through the cold and desolate together. They faced the unknown and uncertain together, and the specter and the shadow of the abominable snowman was never far from them or far from their minds. And life is like that, isn't it? Ours is a sojourn, a pilgrimage into the unknown and the uncertain. The world in which we live is certainly not conducive to the life that we seek to live in Christ. There is constant tension and opposition. The adversary of our souls is always lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce at a moment's notice. Yet, like Rudolph, Hermie, and Yukon Cornelius, we have to press our way. And we do so in part because we have not been given the spirit of fear, but of love and power and a sound mind. We continue because we have the promise that no weapon that's formed against us shall prosper, and greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. They arrived at the island of misfit toys, and with that, we are confronted with our essential brokenness and of our need to identify with the broken. Common lot of the island's inhabitants was something was wrong. A hand, a nose, an ear, an eye, a leg, something was missing. Something was wrong with each toy. which placed them on equal footing. And because of their brokenness, they were unable to fulfill their original intention. They were created with being toys that brought children joy as their intended end. But because of some brokenness, some breaking, perhaps a breaking not of their own fault, they can't realize their created purpose. Is that not the human condition? There is a brokenness that we all have. It is a universal condition called sin. We are born in sin and shapen in iniquity. All of us have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And like the misfit toys, we were not originally created this way. Created in the image and likeness of God. Our initial design and destiny was to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever, to exercise dominion over the earth according to God's standards. But with the fall of Adam and Eve, sin entered the world and brokenness became our condition. And with their banishment from the Garden of Eden and the fall of nature, the world has been a perpetual island of misfits. Misfits whose statement is that of the Apostle Paul, for I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwells no good thing. For the will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. For the good that I would do, I do not do, but the evil that I would not do, that I do. And I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. Oh, wretched person that I am, who will deliver me from the body of this death. I don't like being a misfit. I want to fulfill the created intention of God. And friends, Rudolph gives us some good news. Light comes to the darkness. Redemption comes to misfits. And the abominable is defeated. Do you see Christmas Eve? A blizzard brings darkness and gloom. Heavy fog blankets the atmosphere, and neither Santa nor the reindeer team can see their way. They need light, they need illumination, they need somebody to guide them. The sleigh is packed, but they can't move. They're paralyzed by darkness and grounded by the fog. But in the midst there was a light that was shining in the darkness. The light was Rudolph's light. It was a light that shined from him, and that light began to shine upon them. And herein is another lesson for life. Life presents moments where disadvantage is redemptive, and where the burden that you've borne becomes the blessing for other people. Do you see Rudolph, whose nose disqualified him from the reindeer games? That was the scrimmage. He is the one whose nose is needed for the real game. His nose barred him from practice, but his nose is what is needed on the field. His nose kept him from training, but his nose was needed to lead the operation. Do you see Rudolph now leading Santa and the team? And as they assaulted the canvas called the night, Rudolph makes a change in the flight plan. Rudolph says there's somewhere we've got to stop first before we go to anybody's house and rooftop. And so they stopped by the island of misfit toys, because Rudolph knew their plight and desired for them to be repaired and restored. They were broken, but they could be fixed. They were wounded, but they could be healed. And I know I got some Bible-only person who's been saying, that's a good story, but you're wondering when I'll get to the Word of God. Well, that's why Isaiah 9 comes, because Isaiah is now giving us a messianic prophecy that starts with verses 1 and 2. Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. Isaiah is talking to people living in darkness, in the shadow of death. The way of God was not known to them. The way of peace was not traveled by them. The requirement of doing justly and loving mercy and walking humbly before God had yet to be fulfilled by them. Transgressions had yet to be canceled, and the knowledge of salvation had not been given, and redemption has not been purchased, and the way out of hell had not been provided, and the glory of God had yet to be revealed. Oh, we were in darkness, misfits relegated to the gloom of death, hell, and the grave. But God, Lord have mercy, in the fullness of time would send his Son to be the light that shines in the darkness. The promise of Galilee, of the nations being honored, and of people walking in darkness seeing a great light, and those living in the land of deep darkness, on them the light has dawned. All of that was fulfilled in Jesus. You do know that Nazareth was in Galilee. Yes. The place of his parents, my God, living, and the place where he would grow up. He would be known as Jesus of Nazareth in the province of Galilee. The prophecy is being fulfilled because, friends, this season that we're in, called Advent, is one where we celebrate light coming in the darkness and misfits being redeemed. For those who sit in darkness, God brings light. In the darkness of grief, in the darkness of despair, God brings life. To those relegated to an island of being overlooked and left behind and broken and thrown away, God sends a light. Isaiah says, "For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and he shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace." We celebrate this season as being the season that light comes into the darkness. Zechariah anticipated the arrival of this light when Zechariah declared, "Through the tender mercy of our God, whereby the day spring from on high has visited us." Why? To give a light to them that sit in the darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet to the way of peace. That's what he's talking about Jesus. John, the gospel writer, declares of Jesus, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men, and that light shined in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." Jesus confirmed it, declaring, "I am the light of the world. He that follows after me shall not walk in darkness, but they shall have the light of light." And just like Rudolph, he was rejected by his own. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. They said, "Is this not Mary and Joseph's son? And are they not his brothers and sisters that we see here?" He too was a misfit on the margin. Galilee was on the margin. Nazareth was on the margin. As a matter of fact, one of his own disciples said, "Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?" The word about him as a misfit was, "He shall grow up as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness that we should see him, and there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. His own home folk drove him out of the synagogue. His own family called him crazy. He was a misfit. Foxes had holes, birds of the air had nests, and he had nowhere to lay his head." He traveled with misfits. He chose misfits, cussing Peter and doubting Thomas and hot-headed James and John, rationalizing Philip, tax collecting and cheating Matthew, and betraying Judas. He ate with misfits, publicans and sinners. He ministered among misfits, lepers, the Samaritan woman at the well, the man called Legion, the woman with the issue of blood, Mary Magdalene, a woman caught in adultery, a man at the pool, the man born blind, Zacchaeus, the tax collector. They were all misfits. And then one Friday, he was taken outside of the city of Jerusalem to a hill called Calvary, where he was crucified between two misfits, and he was dying on behalf of every misfit. For while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquity. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. He became every misfit, because he who knew no sin became sin for us, that he might become the righteousness of God in him. He died for misfits. He descended into hell, preached to spirits held captive. Misfits took the keys of death and hell, and then early Sunday morning, God raised him from the dead, and he's alive forevermore, and he now has a name that's above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess that he is Lord, to the glory of God the Father, and his light still shines in the darkness. I don't know about you, but I'm glad that that light shines in the darkness, because I was a misfit. I was separated from God. I was languishing in darkness, but he came into my life, and on my life the light has shone. A songwriter said, at the cross where I first saw the light, and the burdens of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I'm happy all the day. The reason why I'm happy is I'm no longer a misfit. I'm a child of God. I'm an heir of God. I'm a joint heir with Jesus. I'm a fellow citizen in the household of God. I'm built upon the foundation of the prophets and the apostles, with Jesus being the chief cornerstone. He picked me up off the island, fixed me up, and he's building me up. He's tuning me up, and he's changed my song. It's no longer why am I such a misfit, but I've got a song that the angels can't sing. Redeemed, redeemed. I've been washed in the blood of the Lamb. And so in this season, I join the saints of the ages as they sing, hark the herald angels sing, Jesus the light of the world, glory to the newborn King. Jesus the light of the world, we'll walk in the light, the beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright, shine all around us by day and by night. Jesus the light of the world. Am I talking to some former misfits upon whom the light has shined, and the glory of God has been revealed, and the redemption of God has come into your life, and you're able to say, because I'm in Christ, I'm a new creature. All things have passed away, and behold, all things become brand new. Well, if that's you, you ought to scream glory. Glory to the light of the world. Glory, glory to the light of the world. For all who are waiting, for all who are hungering, for all who are praying, for all who are wondering, behold your King. Behold the Messiah. His name is Jesus. Glory, glory, glory.